Hey, I wanted to do the rear brakes on this Volvo S90, and I was going to use this V200 version 2 diagnostic tool, and I did. But I also wanted to show you how to do it without any tools, any electronic tools. You can mess with the motor. It doesn't know where it's at in space and time, so you can back it off and screw it back in, and it'll just go to its limits and stop. No big deal. So I have seen videos where people don't recommend it, and I don't blame them. I'm going to say in this video I don't recommend it. I mean, this was like, $140, $150 on eBay, so there's no need not to use the tool. But anyway, I'm going to show you how to do it without it. But I'm going to mix up the video. I'm actually going to have parts of it where I use the tool and parts of it where I just explain how to work around it. So hopefully it's not confusing. I'll try and clean it up in editing, and thank you for watching. The brake pads are being pressed up against the rotor with an electric motor, and that is much more efficient. There's less parts, and it works great actually, and it's easier to control. So this job is really not difficult at all as far as brakes go, especially if you've done rear brakes before. But it is different. So we will look at that when we tear things apart. Also, one little thing about the tools. I use iCarSoft because I'm a do-it-yourself mechanic. I don't do this for a living. So these are very inexpensive. I think I paid 150 bucks for it. It's like $139, $149, something like that on eBay. And I bought it direct. The only disadvantage to this is they are car specific. This is for Saab and Volvo. And as far as I'm concerned, Saab doesn't exist anymore. I see one putting around every once in a while, but anyway. So if you have multiple vehicles, if you have a BMW, Mercedes, like I did, and a Volvo, like I did, Toyota, Nissan, if you have a multitude of brands, this is going to get expensive quick. And if you want a scan tool, you're going to have to buck up and pay like about 800 bucks to get one that covers all those different ones. But if you just have a single vehicle, for the inexpensive price of 150 bucks, you can get one for your car. And I don't think that's bad, even if you buy multiple ones for your different cars and then give it away or sell it when you get rid of the brand completely out of your life. So anyway, just a little tip for you there. So we're going to connect our system up to the car at the onboard diagnostic plug, which is located right here where the flashlight is. So if I zoom in, it's going to be right here. So let's get that plugged in. Okay, we have power to our diagnostic tool. So we can go ahead and work on it. I am going to turn the car on. What that means is I have the key in the vehicle, and I'm going to rotate the start button with my foot off the brake so that the car powers up. Alright, I have the car powered up. Like I said, I have the key in the vehicle, and I turn the start button with my foot off the brake, and that powered everything up. Now I'll go through the menu on my OBD2 scanner and find the electronic brakes. Okay, so I've put the park brakes back in their normal modes where it's set in park. When the car is shut off, it automatically goes into park. And I'm going to show you a couple of tricks you can do to reset the electric motor back without using the software. And you can do this. I don't recommend it, but I'm going to do it on this car. because it can be done. I mean, the limits that it goes back to when it goes all the way back and then goes into park and stops are really just, you know, they're set, and as long as they function normally, you can do all this. So first things first, you see they have these little plastic covers on them. They're 19 millimeters, and you put on this little tool and pull it off. You can also use a screwdriver and just pry them off. You see, they're just, you know, they're just caps. Nothing fancy. You can get some chrome ones. I thought about going to black lug nuts, but these lug nuts are 33 millimeters, which is actually considered an extended lug nut. So I've kind of put that off for right now. So I've taken my first two bolts out, and I'm going to put on these stays. I call them stays. And what they'll do is they'll help me take the wheel off easier. Because really it's just resting on the hub right here. Unless of course it's glued to the hub through corrosion. Sometimes that happens. Alright, I got the wheel up off the ground. I'll take other lug nuts off. Alright, we'll get the wheel off. Okay, let me show you what I did. I lifted this yellow lock up and pulled the electrical off. Surprisingly, the the speed sensor was already disconnected, so that's going to go here. And then I unclipped the back plate off of the motor. It's just a piece of plastic, and that moves the speed sensor and the electrical wiring out of the way and gives me access to the motor and the calipers. The motor and the calipers. And now it's like a good old-fashioned brake job. Alright, I took the electric brake off. There was the electric parking brake. There were just two bolts. They were 5 millimeter. Now you can relax the motor a little bit with a 9-volt battery. You can use the iCar software. You really can't take it off. I guess you could take the two bolts out and unplug it, but these things are, you know, really pressed in place because it's in park if you're trying to bypass something. So really, with the new Volvos, this is the S90, you really can't screw the motor directly. I don't know, maybe you can take this cap off and screw the motor directly. That was my other tip I was going to show you, but apparently I really don't see how that's possible. You can drive the gearing. Obviously the motor is geared to this push rod right here, and it's probably just a threaded bolt that goes up against the piston. So that, as they say, is that. Anyway, once you get that off, you're pretty much back to your old standard brakes, just doing the brakes like you normally do. Okay, so I'm going to remove my guide since I'm going to replace the rotor. And then I'll remove the anti-rattle clip. And it's pretty easy. It just pops right off. If you're really struggling, like I am, you just get a screwdriver. All right, let's see if I can get this off real easy. Yeah, that was easy. All right, don't let this fly off into space and have to hunt it down. Just a little tip for you. Next, the caliper guide bolts have these little caps on them, so we'll take the cap off and drop that too. Okay, the caliper guides are 7 millimeter, and you want to be careful if you buy a pack of Allen wrenches, because some of them don't contain a 7mm. So if you make sure you either get a complete set or buy a 7mm separately. You might want a long one and a short one. I have a long one to tighten it, and then I take it apart with the socket. So that's how I do it. I'll clean that up and put it back in. What you want to notice is there's no lubricant on there, there's no grease or anything on there. I might put a little bit on the threads, but that is it. Alright, we'll just take our two bolts out. Take the bracket off. The bolts are identical, so there's no top and bottom. Okay, that frees up our rotor. Now it's all-wheel drive, so I can't really rotate it. But I have a keeper screw. I need to take that off, and then the rotor should pop off. But notice the corrosion around here. And this car is 2 years old, and it has like 20,000 miles on it. But it was a rental, and that's why the rear brake pads are gone so quickly, because they most likely drove off with the parking brake on and then it automatically releases, but that wears down the pads faster. Okay, looks like we're going to use a T30 to take this screw out. Again, this is just an alignment screw. And we'll clean that up before we put it all back in. Let's see if it comes off. No, it doesn't really come off. Looks like, oh, there we go. Didn't have to get the hammer. Alright, there we have it. So we're going to clean up the hub. The face, no matter how much corrosion is on there, really doesn't cause the rotor to stick. If you look at the rotor, you'll see that it really sticks in this small area right here. So we can get our anti-seize and put it on the intersection between the hub and the plate, the wheel lug mounting plate, and then that's what we'll do. After I clean that up, get some rust off of there before we put the new rotor on. Now what I like to do is I like to use a pad, leave a pad in place to compress the piston. And I just compress it down all the way. And then that way I'm not pushing directly on the piston there. Well, if you find you need to extract the screw anymore, if you need to get it to the back, you can just use a, what do I have here? An E12, it's an external 12, can go on there, and you can rotate it so that it's all the way back, and then you can compress the piston, because that's just a rod that's pushing onto the piston, is what that is. Okay, since I'm using genuine Volvo parts and the caliper bracket has to come off in order to install the new rotor, it comes with the rotor mounting bolts. So the two bolts that came with it, or that were on the car, right here, I don't have to reuse them, and it also has some Loctite on it, so we can get those on there, torque them down about 25 foot-pounds or so. But first I'm going to clean everything up. There's like brake dust all over the place, and I just like a clean, fresh start to the new pads and rotors. Okay, with everything all cleaned up, wiped down, it's time for reassembly. So first piece on is the rotor. Alright, gonna get a little anti-seize on there, just at the intersection here. Really don't need to go crazy here. That's good enough. Wipe off any excess, and we'll get that rotor on there. Okay, I'm going to hit the rotor with a little bit of brake cleaner just in case there's some preservative on there. I really don't see it, but I'm going to hit it there on the back side. I'm going to put the rotor in place. Set my screw in. And I'll hit the front. Now just take a clean rag, wipe it around. I really don't want to hit that anti-seize and dilute that, or otherwise ruin its effect. All right. Now I have my 2 new bolts, and I will put the brake caliper mount on there. All right, we'll get the bolts in there good and tight. Alright, next I'm going to put the pads in place, and what you want to notice with the OEM pads is this one has like a little clip or ring on it or something that goes on the inside. It's also where the wear indicator is, has a little cutout there. Oh, details, details, details. Here's something that you need to know. There's actually a left and a right. So these are your inside pads and these are your outside pads. For some reason, the inside pads are marked left and right. There are no markings on the outside pad. All the numbers are the same. However, watch out for the L and the R. Alright, next I'll test fit the pads, and you'll notice that there's like a little clip on here, and there is not on the other one. This one goes on the inside, this one goes on the outside, so they will go on there like this. And also before you set them in place, you need to remove this paper. This paper is sticky, and that's why the other one wouldn't release. You can see where it's stuck to the caliper. Again, it should just slide right on, no problems. So I just put a very small amount of anti-seize on the contact area, and you can see where the overflow was there on the side. No big deal. Okay, there's 3 things you want to do before you put the caliper on. One is to make sure that the hydraulic hose is not tangled up with the electrical hose. You want to make sure that it'll actually go on and go across the pads, that you've compressed the piston enough. And third is you want to remove this protective shield here, which protects the sticky part of the pad, so when you do put your caliper on, the caliper actually sticks to the pad. Alright, now we're ready to put our caliper mounting bolts on. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is clean up my caliper mounting bolts, which are also the guide pins. And they do not require any lubricant, no grease, no anti-seize, nothing. But if you do want to put some anti-seize or something on there, you can put it on the threads here. But that's it. Alright, you see the bolt coming out. You know when you're getting near the end. Start them both. Don't start one and then the other, and then you can just snug it down and get it good and tight. Good and tight. And then do the other one. You have a visual indication when it's coming through and tight. Alright, we put our caps back on. Protect the guides. We can put our anti-rattle clip back on. Alright, so it went in real easy off camera. So what I did was, I got the bottom started, I got the top over here, and I just fed it in, and it just slid right in place. So after fighting with it like crazy, trying to figure it out, that's what I did. Okay, let me tell you what I did. On the one side, I did the iCar soft completely, you know, retract, expand, and then the other side I did without the iCar soft, and it works fine. So here's the test to show you that it works okay. So I'm in drive, my foot off the brake, my foot is off the brake, the park is on, the park brake is on, and the car isn't moving. So let me, let me put my foot on the brake, put it back in park.